Shalom, this is Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries. If you've been watching the videos that I've been posting for the second day of Sukkot, which happens to also fall on the weekly preparation day, because tonight starts the weekly Shabbat from Friday night to Saturday night, you've been seeing that I followed this tour of 8 bridges. Actually, I found out I was wrong. The tour actually has 9 bridges, not 8. There's 9, which is interesting because I pointed out last night in one of the videos I made as the high day was ending that, you have the 7 annual feasts, but in Zechariah you have those 2 olive branches on either side of the menorah, and that's actually Purim and Hanukkah that were added in later. So for the fullness you have to have 9. So it's interesting that there's 9 bridges. So I've gone to the 7 bridges, which is the 7 main feast days and also 7 assemblies, and then some personal things have been spoken to me about some of the bridges, and I've shared some of that. But the 8th bridge, which would have been Hanukkah, okay, and I do it in chronological order because we're creatures of time. Time is very important, and Yah speaks to us through time. In fact, Pastor Dale, or Elder Dale, gave a really good message yesterday for the High Shabbat, the Holy Convocation on the first High Shabbat for Sukkot, on how we're bound by time, and Yah chooses to communicate to us through a succession of events through time. So you got to go chronologically through the feast. So if you start at the very beginning of the year, and the Hebrew year always starts in the spring. In fact, it's the first new moon, conjunctive new moon after the spring equinox is when the Hebrew year begins, because according to Genesis 1, you have to use the sun, stars, and moon. And that's the only way to use all 3, is you wait for the first conjunctive new moon after the spring equinox to start the year, and only then will all the barley be aviv throughout Israel, from the bottom to the top. Nehemiah Gordon, who rejects Yahshua, he will sometimes declare the year a month too early, because he only looks for a little pocket of aviv barley somewhere in Israel. But that's really wicked, because his Karaite tradition actually causes people to keep feasts a month early, because you have to wait for all the barley to be aviv throughout all of Israel, not just one little pocket. And so he'll often start, like this next year in 2018, it's interesting, we have a new moon after the 12th new moon in February. We have another new moon on March 17th, which is going to be about 4 or 5 days before the spring equinox. And chances are, because it's so close to spring, there's going to be pockets of aviv barley. And so Nehemiah Gordon and these wicked deceivers are probably going to declare the new year. And in fact, I think the Hillel calendar next year is going to declare the new year then too. So the Jews, and probably Nehemiah Gordon and the Karaites, they're all going to be keeping this apostate calendar next year, where they're going to keep the feast too early. And they're going to wind up keeping Sukkot in mid-September, when the fruit hasn't even been gathered. And this happened back in 2010, it happened again in 2013, and it's very wicked, because people are basically in rebellion and not realizing it. They're keeping the feast too early. So next year is going to be critical. The new year next year is actually not going to happen until, I think it's April 16th or 17th. It's pretty late, actually, which is why Sukkot next year is not going to be until the last week of October. For those following the true scriptural calendar, that, again, you have to do all the indicators, which is Genesis 1 and then the aviv barley. You've got to use the sun, moon, stars, and then make sure all the barley is aviv. Only if you use all 4 of those can you do it. Well, Nehemiah Gordon exalts the barley above everything, which is stupid, because Noah didn't have barley. So how did he figure out the new year? I mean, give me a break. He exalts the barley above everything, which is Karaite man-made tradition. The Hillel calendar, their man-made tradition, because that was Hillel, how to calculate when they were expelled from the land and after Jerusalem was destroyed. So both of them are operating on pagan schemes. It just so happens this year in 2017, everyone's lined up on the same one, except for the stupid crescent mooners, and they're a day late and $1 short. Sorry, the crescent moon really annoys me, because it's, just as it's important to keep the Shabbat on the right day and not do it on Sunday the next day, it's so important to keep it on conjunctive new moon, so you're not keeping it a day late. Because Sunday is a day late from Shabbat every week. So if you keep the feast days a day late, guess what? You're doing the same thing that the Sunday Christians are doing with the annual feasts. So crescent moon really disturbs me. But in any case, this year everyone happened to be lined up pretty much. But next year it's going to be dicey. I'm pretty sure that the Hillel calendar and the crescent moon Nehemiah Gordon crowd, Michael Rood crowd, they're all going to be a month too early. So I'll get more into that. But anyway. So I went through these 7 bridges, and they were all representative of the 7 assemblies and those 7 main feast days. Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Shavuot, Yom Teruah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. But this one, the next one in the timeline would be Hanukkah. And I believe Hanukkah is, Yahshua went up to the temple, Solomon's porch in John 10 for Hanukkah. I think Hanukkah is critical. It's a great time to renew I could not get to the 8th bridge today because I didn't have enough time. The sun will be setting here soon, and I got to get stuff done before Shabbat begins and get back to the main Sukkot camp at Cornerstone. So I couldn't do the 8th. I couldn't do Hanukkah, and that's fine because Hanukkah really, the prophetic fulfillment of Hanukkah, I believe, is actually after the Great Tribulation, after we've been resurrected. We return with Yahshua in our resurrected bodies. The Antichrist has been put in the lake of fire, and it's after all this. And the fulfillment of Hanukkah is when the millennial temple is actually inaugurated, and that's a couple months after Yahshua is returning and ruling and reigning from Jerusalem, and we're there with him and ruling and reigning over the nations who survived the Great Tribulation. So I couldn't get to Hanukkah, and I will. I mean, I definitely will try to get to it sometime in these, throughout the Feast of Sukkot. But I couldn't do it. I didn't have enough time. But I really wanted to get to the 9th bridge, which is the one that you're seeing behind me, because the 9th feast is Purim, and Purim is critical. A lot of people don't realize this, but Purim, which is in the book of Esther, Hadassah, Purim, which is a 2-day feast, it usually happens in February or March. It's a late winter feast. Purim is critical in understanding the events surrounding the abomination of desolation, because you have Haman, which is a picture of the Antichrist. He issues this decree, this 11-month decree, to basically slaughter the Jews. I mean, he's like the precursor of Adolf Hitler. He's an Antichrist. And Esther herself had to go into this intense 3-day fast of no food, no water to seek how to approach the king and get this reversed. So Purim is critical to understand the abomination of desolation. And the abomination of desolation, which is the event that kicks off the final 3.5 years before Messiah returns, the real Messiah. The abomination of desolation kicks off the 1260 days or 1290 days of the Antichrist rule. It encompasses the 1260 days of the 2 witnesses preaching. It encompasses the 1260 days that the woman is in the safe place and being nourished by Yah, which we really saw a picture of that in that 6th bridge I went to, Philadelphia. It's beautiful. But the abomination of desolation is all about the fulfillment of Purim. That's how Purim is going to be fulfilled, is the abomination of desolation. And remember, this abomination of desolation, according to what Paul was revealed and according to the Torah and the prophets, and even Yahshua himself, the abomination of desolation is a delusion that Yahweh himself sends. It says in 2 Thessalonians that because they believe not the truth and love not the truth, that Yahweh himself will send them a great delusion. And Yahshua even warns, he says, if it were possible, even the very elect would be deceived by this. And that's why we have the warning of Lot's wife. When they fled Sodom and Gomorrah, the angel said, don't even look back. And of course, Lot's wife did look back because she still had a little bit of Sodom and Gomorrah in her heart, and she was turned to a pillar of salt and incinerated. And that's the delusion is going to be so bad that even if you love Yahshua with everything in you and love your neighbor as yourself, you're walking in as much of Torah as possible, you're filled with the Holy Spirit, if you look back, because Yahshua says when this goes down, don't go back to get your cloak or anything on your roof, just get out of there. Leave, flee east into the mountains, get out. If you look back, if you still have a little bit of that world in your heart that you haven't dealt with, I don't care how faithful you've been or how long you've been walking with the Lord, you're done. And Yash revealed to me that when I came to this 9th bridge and showed me exactly what's going to happen. So first, I want to just kind of show this bridge. It's called the Jordan. Like the Jordan River, it's called the Jordan Bridge. And real interesting history about this bridge, which I read about in the plaques. The bridge was actually built quite a while ago, but it wound up, in 1994, it wound up getting burned. It was in a different location. It got burned because of, I think, a firecracker accident or something. It got burned. And so I think this was back in the 80s when this happened. Anyway, in 94, they decided to take the remnants of it and move it to a new location, which is here in Staten, which is a suburb of Salem. They moved it, they rebuilt it and renovated it, and they actually got all the stuff together to make it renewed in 1998, in May of 98, and they finished it by September of 98. And those dates are going to be really key in understanding the abomination of desolation. So let me, I think what I'm going to do here, I want to get, I really want to make sure that I get some good, this is going to be a very important video because I'm going to explain how the abomination of desolation is not only going to deceive Christians who reject Torah, but it's also going to deceive Jews who reject Yahshua, and it's going to deceive Messianic Hebrew roots people who reject 1 Thessalonians 4, which is that we literally get caught up into a cloud to meet Yahshua in the air at the sound of the trumpet. That's a literal event. We know this from Acts 1. You know, Yahshua literally went up into the clouds 10 days before Shavuot, 2,000 years ago. And the angel said, hey, just as he leaves, he's going to come back. And when he comes back, literally from the clouds, we're going to literally be transformed. Our body's going to be transformed. The dead Messiah rise first. And then we who are alive and remain, the Philadelphians, we get caught up to be with them. And it's a literal event, very public event. It's not this secret pre-tribulation rapture. It's a seventh trumpet event that happens toward the end of the Great Tribulation. And some people are kind of spiritualizing 1 Thessalonians 4 for whatever reason, and that's going to play a part in this great delusion. Now, I'm going to explain that, but first of all, there's a wooden footbridge here. It's really beautiful. One thing I noticed about this place is it's very similar to the 6th bridge that I went to. It's almost identical. I mean, there's some differences, but you know, both the 6th bridge and this 9th bridge have these beautiful parks. So they're very similar. So what Yah showed me was that the legitimate safe place that's talked about in Revelation 12, where the woman flees into the safe place for 1,260 days. These are people who are Philadelphians. Remember, there's 7 assemblies in the book of Revelation. Only one of those assemblies escapes the Great Tribulation. Only one. That means 6/7 of the Christian Messianic Hebrew roots have to go through the Great Tribulation. But one is given the promise that because you learned the word of my patience, because you prayed to be counted worthy, you're not going to have to go through that hour of temptation. You're going to get to go to a safe place. And Revelation 12 talks about where the Philadelphian believers go. And every Christian, every Messianic Hebrew roots person on the earth is one of the 7 assemblies. You're either Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamos, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, or Laodicea. And you want to be a Philadelphian Christian. That's the one you want to be in. But there's some things you have to go through to be a part of Philadelphia. So 6/7 of the Christian world, of the Messianic Hebrew roots world, are going to have to go through this 3.5-year Great Tribulation period in order to refine them and have to be martyred and things like that. But only 1/7, the Philadelphians get to escape. So that's important to realize. But the Philadelphian bridge that I went to looks very similar to this one. Very similar. I mean, it has this beautiful park, and it even looks the same. It's very similar. And so what Yah showed me is that just as the true Philadelphian believers are going to get taken by Yah to this mysterious safe place where they're going to be nourished for this 3.5-year period, so too the ones who are still living, still have sin in their lives, basically, they're going to think they're going to a safe place because, again, this looks very similar, but it's not going to be. It's going to be a snare. It's going to be a deception. This is how the whore is burned with fire. So let me go over here to the bridge real quickly. Let's get another background here of the bridge. So I want to talk about these dates because the dates are very, very important. Let me just walk over here and get the dates here. I want to make sure I get everything correct. So it burned down in 94, and it was rebuilt. It was moved and rebuilt and renovated in 98. And by the way, the Philadelphian bridge was also, if you remember, it was also had to be renovated. It wasn't moved, but it had to be renovated. Actually, it might have been moved. It's interesting that this one and the Philadelphian are so similar, and yet this is sort of the counterfeit of Philadelphia. Okay, so if you look up behind me, you see that it was built in 1998. So what I can tell you is this: in the summer of 97 was when we had this major revival at my non-denominational Christian charismatic church. And this was before I got into the Hebrew roots of the Christian faith. And this evangelist preached on getting the sin out. I mean, get the sin out. And it led to genuine repentance on my part and many that were going to the church that were sort of hypocrites or not genuinely converted. It was an awesome time. But what happened was by May of 98, and this is about the time I left the church because I got a scholarship and moved up to Oregon. By about May to September of 98, which is when this bridge was being renovated and constructed and put in place, the revival died at my church because the pastor was getting pressure from another pastor because we were doing a lot of street preaching down in